Game over, man. Game over. Johnny.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Chasing the Gold. This is Cannes Part 2. So Part 1 last week I brought on Hector to talk about all the movies that he saw at Cannes and go through his whole list with me, and then I decided this is too much for one episode, so we decided to break it up. So today we're covering Part 2 of everything that Hector saw at Cannes. Hector, introduce yourself to the Chasing the Gold crowd and tell me how, I guess, this past week of your life has been.
Hi, my name is Héctor González. I'm an independent film critic and writer for Loud and Clear Reviews, The Movie Buff, and of course, In Session Films. And I'm here again to try and recap my Cannes experience while battling with my ADHD.
No, so here's a question I did think a lot about over the course of the week, which is like, did talking about any of the films last week change anything for you, or do you feel differently about any of the movies that you saw now, just now that you've sat with them a little while longer?
I think I was a little bit mean.
But that was the best part. So, not that I want to encourage meanness, but we love a little bit of snark, and I think you know what? Be yourself and embrace whatever you feel at the time. Okay? Whatever pops into your head, I want to hear. And I do want to say, so you did send me your letterbox list. I didn't cheat, which was really difficult because there were so many times that I wanted to open it and see the movies so that maybe I can research them, but I was like, no, I want to go in blind. So I don't know what's to come, what movies we're covering today. Yeah. But before we dive in, just read the first 14 that we talked about last week to give people a primer.
Yeah. So so I watched 28 films. At we're going like ranking from lowest to my least liked to my most liked. At number 28 was Paolo Sorrentino's Parthenope, which was awful. And then at number 27, we had Emilia Perez by Jacques Audiard, which was awful. Then we had at number 26, Holy Cow. At number 25, Simone of the Mountain. At number 24, Rumors by Guy Madine. At number 23, The Most Interesting of the Bunch, Megalopolis by Francis Ford Coppola, which is a train wreck that is as amusing as it is destructive. So if you're interested in that, then go check it out when it comes out. If it comes out, I don't know what's going to happen in the US with that one. At number 22, we had Block Pass. 21, Andrea Arnold's Bird. 20, Christmas Eve in Miller's Point. At number 19, we had Ghost Cat Anzu. 18 was Girl and the Needle. 17, When the Light Breaks. 16, Ghost Trail. 15, Savannah and the Mountain. At number 14, The Story of Soleimani. And those were the first 14 films we covered on the previous episode.
All right, so now we're heading into territory that's hopefully a little bit more positive.
Yeah, these are the good films. These are the films I actually liked.
All right, so tell me number 13.
Okay, number 13 was Something Old, Something New, Something Borrowed by Hernan Rosselli, which premiered in the Director's Fortnight. It's a really interesting film because it's a crime drama with a neo-noir background, but instead of using the old school approach of neo-noir films, it is more meditative and personal, and it uses VHS, CCTV, and security camera footage to tell a story about a family that is dealing both with the loss of its patriarch and the secret underground lottery business that he left behind. So through a multi-year process, you see how they deal with this new business that they didn't know about, the money laundering, the secret files, and they're worrying because they're dealing with grief and this forced job that they now have to do. But the other businesses that were in correlation with the patriarch of this family, they're being raided. So the chances of them getting caught and being arrested for something that they didn't do themselves. It was the father of the family that did these things, and they're now scattering around the house and searching for files. They're burning things, burning details. They're looking for if he had money placed somewhere else that is quite sketchy. And it's the thing that's fascinating is that it's a quite simple narrative, but it doesn't use the same structure or the same stylistic tendencies that other crime dramas use. And it's fascinating that plenty of filmmakers from Argentina are using these genres that have been using the same tropes for years and many decades, and now like going using other tendencies to explore it and deliver intriguing and really fascinating stories.
What was the Argentinian movie from last year that was really good that I'm blanking on right now?
Trenkelauken. Was it that one? It was a two-part one.
No, it was okay. I will look it up while you tell me number 12.
Okay. Number 12 was Universal Language by Matthew Rankin. It also premiered on the Director's Fortnight, which talking about the Director's Fortnight, it was a really interesting section of the festival that rarely gets like many people to like view, not only because the theater in which most of these films play is really far, but also because it isn't like the spotlight ones. It isn't the Uncertain Regard. It isn't the in competition films. It's like a separate festival itself. And there are many interesting films in the section that we probably talk about: Savannah and the Mountain and Christmas Eve and Miller's Point. But like Something Old, Something New, and Something Borrowed, Universal Language is a film that stands on its own. It's a deadpan and structurally quite odd, heartfelt piece about what ties people in a city, strangers, neighbors and such. And it does so by uniting the stories of multiple characters like in vignette like pieces, as well as uniting three different cities in one, which makes it look like a weird like world. It's not like something that it's something human, but something like that seems distant yet emotionally tangible. And the way that Matthew Rankin explores this is via deadpan comedy, which feels like the works of Roy Anderson, which is really melancholic and saddened, yet you laugh at the pain. You laugh at their pain, but you laugh at your own as well. And in some ways, it ties to Wes Anderson too, because not only because of the charming nature of his style of deadpan, but also how he centers the camera and everything is like angular, and each like production and the production design and costume like fit within this own world. Like it feels emotionally tangible, but it the look itself, it feels quite strange and quite distant. And it's a really difficult project to pull off, because with deadpan comedy it can go in many different ways, and people react to it in different forms. But it managed to capture me by the end, because at first you are quite confused with where it is going, as it introduces you to some characters, then we follow another one, and then it goes back to the one we are introduced first. But at the end, he delivers a scene that ties it all, and it comes with the universal language that Matthew Rankin is speaking of.
So you can answer this question at the end, but were there any filmmakers that were maybe new to you that you hadn't seen anything from them before that you consider sort of your big discovery out of the festival?
There are quite a lot actually, because the two I talked about, Hernan Rosselli with Something Old, Something New, and Something Borrowed, as well as Universal Language by Matthew Rankin. They are filmmakers that I didn't know about, and they actually really impressed me a lot. But there is another one from another film that premiered at the Critics Week that actually impressed me even more than Matthew Rankin and Rosselli.
All right, we'll get there. The movie I was thinking about, by the way, was not Argentina 1985, which I really liked, and
that's the
encourage people
courtroom
to.
drama, right?
And but it, as you were saying, kind of plays with the conventions of the courtroom drama and what you're expecting in courtroom drama to be, and brings a lot of humor to a very, very heavy topic in ways that you're not expecting. So, good stuff. Okay, well, see, now I'm eager to get to the filmmaker. Where are we? Number 10. Or number 11.
No, number 11. Number 11.
Yeah.
We're number 11. Number 11 is The Other Way Around by Jonas Treva. It also premiered at the Directors Fortnight. There are plenty of the Directors Fortnight films in this latter half of the Cannes experience, by my eyes. Okay. The thing with the film is that it is a film made by filmmakers about filmmakers. And by that recap, many will roll their eyes to the back of their head, or many will be like, okay, let's give it a shot. Because it may reach a certain point where it's too pretentious, or it's too on the nose, that people distance from it because they're not interested in something of that nature. But in the case of Treva, he uses that that concept quite well, because it is a metatextual ode to love and separation, both the beginning and end of a beautiful relationship. And it centers around a couple who want to celebrate their separation instead of celebrating what unites them, which is like a wedding. This is the opposite of a wedding. And that was mentioned by one of the partners' father, who had this idea for several years, and they decided to go with it to see how things go. And the film is structured by them asking family and friends about the event and and what they think about it. And all of their reaction is quite the same. It's basically like, why would you do that? Or are you both agreeing with this? And they're like, yeah, we agree with this. And we know it seems weird, but it's something that we want to do. And the thing is, they are the woman in this relationship is a filmmaker, and the male is an actor. And basically, the film they are making, in which he stars and she directs and writes, basically reflects the relationship they wish they had, or how they would like to proceed their relationship. Like the questioning of it all, like what are we going to do, or how do we keep this fire alive, while they're being deceived by a weird concept that later, when they ask the father, he's like, well, I only said that in theory. I don't want you guys to basically go with it. And they're perplexed, because the person who came up with this concept, he's like backtracking, because he doesn't want to see them, go through something that will end up hurting them in the end. And it's at first, it's, of course, it's on the nose, because they constantly throw metatextual and self-referential jabs. There's a scene like, oh, this is like a concept for a movie, and you're like, oh, of course, we're watching a movie and they're quoting the movie itself. And but it's actually really touching, and it's actually really tactful in how it covers that topic, which is surprising, because when you look at the majority of these type of films, it's basically too like scattered, and I think its ideas are very polished.
Tell me the title of this one more time.
The Other Way Around
The
by
Other Way.
Jonas Tereva.
I think of the movies we've talked about so far, this is the one that seems the most interesting, and I don't think I've heard people talk about it very much or at all.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's basically a film from the director's fortnight, and that section doesn't get like many eyes as the in competition films or the uncertain regard, the main competition ones. And it's unfortunate because there are many bright filmmakers that start their careers in the side section, whether it is the critics week or the director's fortnight. But it deserves as much attention as the in competition films, because there are many brilliant filmmakers who, in maybe a couple years or in decades, you'll look at their work and you're like, oh, in actuality, these are like some of my favorites, and I think people should give that section, a deeper glance when they're making their schedules for next year's or whatever year they will end up attending to the festival.
And I'm assuming when you go back, you're probably going to make it a goal to maybe check or make that section more of a priority for yourself.
Yeah, I often, when I cover the festival online, I mostly target that section, because in actuality, like the majority of the most interesting, or at least original pictures, are in that section. Of course, the best ones in theory are the ones that are in competition, and and it's obvious because the bigger filmmakers are there. This year we have like Coralie for Legit, and we had man, I went blank. Paul Schrader, we had Capaldi, we had Francis Ford Coppola. We have plenty of big names, big auteurs that have cemented their legacy throughout the past couple of years. But this section also has like bright young filmmakers, and also ones that have been working for plenty of years now, but they haven't reached that state of being recognized by a big or large group, and I think people should definitely check it out more than they used to.
All right, good advice. Actually, when we finish with this, I'll probably go on Wikipedia or something and go through previous years and see what piques my interest. I'm sure there's like a lot of iconic movies that we probably don't realize started out in Director's Fortnight. So that'll be a good rabbit hole to fall down. All right, tell me what's next.
At number 10, we have a film that won. I don't remember if it won the jury prize award or the Grand Prix. I think it was the Grand Prix. All We Imagine as Light by Paya Capadilla. I think it's the name. I don't remember quite well. It premiered in competition, of course, and it is. I think if I see this one again, I think I will like it way more than I like it like now. It's a poetic and imagery-focused tale of love and friendship set in Mumbai amidst a repressive force of society. Basically, Payal has done before. She was mostly a documentary filmmaker, and this is now like her official, in quote, foray into narrative filmmaking. But the film itself feels documentary-esque thanks to how she portrays the city. Like the city comes alive. The characters itself don't feel like actors. They feel like people, like crossing. We're like crossing. We're trespassing almost through their lives, And it's very intimate and melancholic, and in its tone and in the form that the film is shot, it almost feels like a Jia Zanke or Wong Kar-wai type of film, and because it covers the detachment that one has across a big city. Of course, I haven't gone through it because in Puerto Rico, everybody knows everybody. It's a very small island, but the people who live in, let's say, New York or Los Angeles, or the same case Mumbai or London, you have that social detachment, because many of the people you come across, they're strangers, and how Capadia depicts that, it's quite fascinating and rather touching. And almost near the end, I won't spoil how it does so, but I want to mention this because it was really well executed. The film, for the most part, it's really grounded. Even though I said it's poetic, but it's poetic in the imagery, but in terms of the storytelling, it is really grounded. But she offers some forms of magical realism through her storytelling. She smears it little by little, but in the end, that's when the clear focus comes, and it comes into contrast with the grounded nature of her, of how she has developed the story so far. But in the end, she comes up with something quite magical and really transcending, that it made the film, I think it made the film quite better and more touching than it was in the previous acts. That third act, it's really brilliant, and that's why I think if I watch it again, I think that's the reason that I will even like it more than I do now.
I love movies like that where the end sort of recontextualizes everything that came before, messes with your brain.
Yeah, there are many like films at this year camp with brilliant endings, especially the my favorite like four films, well, three exactly. My favorite three films of the festival had amazing, like awe-inspiring endings that made me fall in love with film again.
That's okay. I'm gonna ask you about that. All right. Now what's next?
Uh, Next is Paul Schrader's "Oh Canada," which
Oh
also,
boy.
no, it's good. It's good. I have seen many people critique it. Actually, I've seen many like sour reviews, and in some ways, I understand how they can't relate much to the story, or how they see Paul Schrader's depiction of, well, his adaptation of the book, of, I think it's by, let me check.
Well, let me ask you this. What is your relationship to Paul Schrader's work? Are you a fan? Have you seen like a lot of his filmography? How did you feel coming into Oh Canada?
I I am a fan of, I'm a really good fan, I'm a really great fan of his work in the 70s and 80s.
Mm.
American Gigolo, Hardcore is a really great one. Of course, Mishima, Life in Four Chapters, that's his magnum opus. That's his brilliant work.
Mm.
That's something like, I haven't seen anything like that in my many years of scouring through the many dark holes of cinema. But my problem with Schrader is, in this latter half, the Man in the Room series of films he's doing, the Card Counter, First Reformed, and the one he did with Joel Edgerton, the Master Gardener, those type of films. I I have been, I like First Reformed, but I'm not too much of a fan of the Card Counter or Master
Mm.
Gardener, even though it has like really good ideas or interesting ideas, perhaps. Um, you know, and I don't know. I don't know. I was quite motivated by to see "Oh Canada." More so
Mm.
when I was making the schedule. Not initially when it was announced that it was going to play there, but making my schedule, I was like, okay, I need to check this out, because one, it has a very interesting background in the form that Paul Schrader's cinema has always been about death, but in this case, it takes a more literal turn. You know, he has been sick he was sick a couple years ago in the pandemic, I believe, and he almost died. And his wife was suffering from, I think it's Alzheimer's, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember quite well, but he has to take care of her. And during those years that he was making films, but at the same time he was taking care of his wife, his good friend Russell Banks passed away. So in these last few years, he has been thinking more about death than ever before. We all of these events that are crossing one with the other, and he decided to, as both a gift or like a piece of appreciation to Russell Banks, to adapt his novel Forgone, but using the original title that Russell Banks was going to use, which is Oh Canada. But at the same time, he's using that piece and making the central character, which is played by Richard Gere, whom he worked before in American Jail, and they haven't worked since, since. So this is like another like return, another collaboration, like many decades in the making. But he's using his character as a passageway into his own mind, because the film centers around I don't remember the name. Let me check. Around Leonard Feith. He was a leftist documentary filmmaker who was going to go to Vietnam in 1968, but he dodged the draft by fleeing to Canada. And it covers both his present, now old and near his deathbed, and in his years of dodging the draft and coincidentally leaving a family behind to go to Canada and start a new one, basically masquerading his own life and forging a new identity, at the same time keeping plenty of secrets that when he's asked to do an interview in the present day, he is struggling to basically like say his true life or make people believe what happened to him way back in that era. So it's like a confessional of some sorts. And in that way that it is a confessional for Leonard Feith, this is a confessional for Paul Schrader, both in his random, chaotic, and rampant Facebook postings that many people see on Twitter, but his ideologies and what he's done in his life and how he views cinema in some sense. And it's really, really effective in how he does so, because if you piece together his that past with how this film explores the intertwined between past and present and fake identities, and that struggle to piece together a life that you have now dismissed, it's really, really fascinating. And I think that's what made it work for me, apart from the great performances by Richard Gere and Uma Thurman, but that background and how he plays out this film, how tragic it feels, because he's basically expressing his own life through a fictional character that his good friend made, but he didn't have like Paul Schrader in mind when writing the character of Leonard Feith, but in some way Schrader finds a way to thread both Feith and his life together in a way that's so majestic. Really, it's truly one of his best work in recent years. I really, really liked it.
Wow. Okay, I have to be honest, this was not a movie that I was particularly interested in, and now I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, I want to start with the Richard Gere of it all, because I was looking up his awards history. Only one Emmy nomination 30 years ago. In my opinion, one of the most charismatic actors we have and one of the most underappreciated. Tell me about sort of his performance. And I mean, you mentioned Uma Thurman, who is also, unfortunately, I think not ever been able to maybe show us what she could do post Pulp Fiction. I mean, not
Yeah.
Pulp. I mean, her Tarantino era, right?
Yeah.
So how did that play into the film?
I mean, Richard Gere, as I mentioned before, he has worked with Schrader before, but this is a new like version of Schrader. This is one more meditative. This is one more focused. It is not a discredit to his previous work, that which is excellent, and those are thematically multi-layered projects, But in this case, it is more like a film like more focused on its ideologies, whether it is the climate change or racism, but like it's more thoroughly focused on that lane instead of switching through multiple topics. So Richard Gere, he's accustomed to working with Schrader, even though it's one film. But one film with Schrader, it's mostly like a masterclass in how to handle tough scenarios. But in this case, he's really. I'm going to say it plain. Richard Gere is really good in this movie. He's really good, and his best role in many years, many years. Because it has been a while since he has gotten such a defined role. We have seen him in plenty of terrible movies. In fact, he was in movie 43, which is unfortunate. He was one of the actors who decided to join that cursed project, and it's a shame, but he redeems himself a lot with his performance here in Canada.
So do you think that this is a movie that is going to be easy for people to embrace? I mean, given there have been mixed reactions, like where do you think the mixed reactions coming from, and how do you think like the larger non-Cannes audience is going to react?
It's a really tough question to ask, because most of the films in this year Cannes were having those mixed reviews. Like, people were saying, "Oh, I really like this," and other people were like, "Oh, I hated this," and it's a really weird experience. So I really don't know how regular audiences are going to react. If you like Paul Schrader's latest pieces of work, which I'm quite divisive on, per se, you might find a better hook to get into it. But others that aren't so well informed with how he proceeds his narratives, how he approaches his visual storytelling and all, they may find it like more difficult to engage with the film per se, and most people will know about the background of it all, what has happened in Paul Schrader's life recently. So, which I think it brings another layer to the film that made me connect with the film more. So if I hadn't known about that, I might have been like a little bit more dismissive to the film, because in some cases the back and forth between past and present is quite rocky. But since I know the background of it all, it's more, I find it more immersive, more effective, now that I know where he's going for, and, how it ties to his life, and how he makes sure that the character of Leonard Fife is basically a reflection of a man with a lost identity, but of himself as well. So, it's quite a tricky question, because Paul Schrader films are always, mixed in terms of audience, with the exception of his classics, and Taxi Driver, which he wrote the screenplay for, Mishima, which is really critically and acclaimed, and cinephiles across the world have embraced it plenty, but most of his work is quite mixed. So, I think it's the regular reaction to a Paul Schrader film, which makes him more of an interesting director.
I don't know if we touched on this previously, but I'm quite stubborn. So the more somebody tells me something is bad, or the more I see sort of a divisive reaction, that makes me something in my brain clicks, and I'm like, oh, I have to see it. So like
Oh
Amelia
yeah.
Perez, I'm super excited. Rumors, I'm super excited. This one, like I said, was kind of meh on, but now I'm hyped. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Friends tell me about a film. Oh, you won't like it. I'm like, now I want to watch it. But that
you
but that
know, yeah.
happened. That happened with Bad Boys Ride or Die. They told me you wouldn't like it, and I saw it, and they were right.
Oh, they were. I thought you were gonna say you were pleasantly surprised.
No. It was awful.
Have you seen the other ones? Because I'm trying to debate if I should watch the previous ones and then go see it, or if I should just go see it or not see it.
I mean, yeah, I have seen them, but I don't like any of them. The best one of the four is the previous installment, Bad Boys. Which one? Bad Boys for Life. Bad Boys for
Mm.
Life. That's the best one. But they are what what it is, what basically you think a Bad Boys film is. But Bad Boys Ride or Die is what you think a Bad Boys film is, but in its worst tendencies. So you
All right, this
that's basically it.
can commercial break brought to you by Bad Boys Ride or Die. That was not where I was expecting to cover. Okay, so after Paul Schrader and your dislike for Bad Boys, oh my God, where would you like to go next? I'm at your mercy here.
Let's go for number 8, which is Blue Sun Palace by Constance Sang. Um, which premiered in the Critics Week, the Semaine de la Critique section, which is another side section of the festival. And I'm going to read you the synopsis because I didn't write about this one, didn't write a review about it, and I have a little bit trouble on recapping films about films that I haven't wrote about or haven't like notes about it. Um, it says a sudden loss catalyzes an unlikely bond between two migrants in the Chinese community of Queens. Navigating lives far from home and the painstaking labor that supports them, they journey through grief together in hopes of finding family. And in the same way that After Sun was the how they say the hidden film from the Critics Week that people fell in love with, I think Blue Sun Palace can be that film. Of course, if the right distribution comes to it, which I hope a good company can handle that one. Um, if it in some ways it feels like this is an adaptation of a novel, and I mean that because everything is quite detailed, from the character dynamics to their tension and their like emotions. It feels like everything is layered out through a piece of paper. It's quite fascinating, and basically it is how you think you may know a person, or let me rephrase it. You know a person, but it doesn't give you the right to know them thoroughly. It's
Mhm.
basically how you see a lover like slowly turning into a stranger through a myriad of conversations. You think you know a person, but later on you think back and there are many details and many things that you don't know about them. And I think it's quite fascinating how Constance no blend combined that with a migrant story. It's quite fascinating. Like I don't know, it's quite fascinating. That's the exact word, because the thing is that I really don't know how to explain it, but it's very very sensitive and very intimate, much like all we imagine as light. My bad. And it doesn't indulge in the poeticness or the vividness of the imagery as Kapal Paya Capadilla does, but Constance makes sure that when each character is basically slowly, uncovering this thought of not knowing the person you are slowly like in love with, like falling in love with, it feels poetic, but not in the like literal sense, but it's mostly vivid, but not exactly with the magical realism that one might expect. Yeah.
Is there a reason why you didn't write about this one?
I'm tired. I was tired. I was tired. I can't write about everything. I was
Fair enough,
really
fair enough.
tired.
I thought, you know how sometimes you watch something and you just feel like you can't really articulate how you feel about it? I mean, that's happened to
Yeah.
me plenty. Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to me with The Lost Daughter
Mm,
from Maggie Gyllenhaal. I really loved that film, but when I wanted to sit down and write about it, I just couldn't. Like
yeah.
it was hard for me to express it. It was just like, the experience defines basically how I like the film or love the film, And in the case with Blues and Palace, happened to me the same thing as The Lost Daughter. I was just so immersed, and it's really like I didn't take notes. I didn't like. I just let the film like go through me.
Mm. Are there, I mean, you've mentioned like grief a lot, which is a common theme for cinema, but are there any themes that you noticed? I mean, I think last time we talked about a couple movies that had to do with the refugee experience.
Yeah.
Are there any other themes that you noticed throughout the films that you saw or films that you saw were talked about?
I mean, self-reflection maybe, because there are a few films by big filmmakers that in some way or another they reflect on their own lives, whether it is their filmic careers or their personal lives. And that happened quite a bit, not quite a bit, but like 3 or 4 projects that I saw that basically covered that topic. But grief is the one that travels across all of the all of cinema right now. That's
Mm,
like the pet topic that everybody is covering, and in some ways you go tired of it, but it depends on how the filmmaker approaches it. If it comes at you with these bland statements or statement that everybody is saying, then you're like, oh, like it loses the originality of the film. But if it finds a fascinating way or a distinctive way to approach those topics that everybody's covering, then you're fine.
mm. Is there something you're particularly drawn to that you like to see?
I mean, in some ways, I'm really interested in. The thing is, grief is a good topic, but again, it has to do with how people approach it. It has to be personal. It can't be like in some case universal, because the topic itself is universal, but we want to see how one's experience, like you can relate to some degree to your own, and with that comes the conversation with the film, and how you relate and how your experiences define what the movie is capturing, and so that's one of the topics, and I'm really open to whatever a filmmaker brings upon, because there are plenty of things that or topics that I might not have in mind, but then
Mm,
they portray them, and you're like, and then you think back, you're like, it comes again, it comes with the conversation, you think back with the film, and then you basically you venture through your mind and the mind of the filmmaker. You have this
mm.
conversation with the film and yourself, and that's where the intrigue comes from. The most important thing about a film is not no of course the technical elements of it all must function, but the most important thing is what you get out of it.
Mm. Okay, wow, that was. I can see why you're a writer. You're very eloquent, very eloquently put. All right, tell me what's next.
What? Okay, number 7 is the festival favorite in both its Palme d'Or win and critical acclaim is Sean Baker's Anora. I really like this film, but I want to state that I'm not that big of a Sean Baker fan. I am because I like Starlet and I like Red Rocket, but I dislike a lot Tangerine and the Florida Project. I really don't like those films. But what
Can
makes
you
him a
tell me why
yeah.
those films particularly?
Tangerine, I couldn't like connect with it. I couldn't get into it. You know,
Mm,
I couldn't like get it with the characters. I didn't like the how everything was paced together, and I just couldn't connect with it at all. And when you don't connect with a film, it's hard for you to like keep on or be engaged with what the story being told. And the Florida Project, it's basically the same thing, but I found it quite odd. I didn't. The thing that I like about Sean Baker is how he explores with curiosity, intimacy, and respect the lives of people who follow the American dream. And I think he faltered a bit in that sense with the Florida Project. I did feel that at some points it felt forced and didn't feel true to life in some sense. And that's what made me disconnect with the film at all. And it is odd that I say this because Red Rocket doesn't feel exactly like a story that could happen in real life. To some points, there are certain details in the story that do, but how everything develops, it feels very cinematic. And Anora, it's the same thing, but more playful because it follows a young woman, dancer in a club that at night when she feels like it and when the reason is right, she sleeps with a customer, and in one of her in one day, she is basically hired since she speaks a little bit of Russian by a oligarch, the son of an oligarch, a young son of an oligarch, who basically is searching for a partner for escapades, basically. And he slowly falls in love with Anora, and the two, they fall in love. She sees the opportunity, right? She wants to get out of the gutter, basically. And this might be her opportunity to live the life that she always wanted. And it doesn't feel forced for her because she is really falling for the guy. It's not like something one way. They're both slowly falling in love with each other. But then his parents figure out that he wants to marry Anora, and they decide to annul the marriage and separate them. And then it comes into a weird function, like a weird combination of tone, which is funny, actually very funny, but also very sad and also like very tense because it comes into play with Anora, the kid who has decided to run away and disappear, leaving Anora with the parents and the bodyguards that are meant to keep the kid aligned. And it it works. It manages to work, and I don't know how, but Sean Baker, even though I said like I prefer him when he's more grounded, like manages to make these weird scenarios that may feel too distant, but at the same time they do feel genuine and they do feel respectful and intimate for the lives of sex workers, which he said he wants to continue making films about them to remove the stigma from sex work. And and it's really fascinating. It's he's becoming a master of tone slowly before our eyes. And with each film, he is growing into a better filmmaker, even when he's distancing himself from the original, very grounded and humanistic tones of his movies. And at the center of all, you have Mickey Madison, who is, that she's becoming a star before our eyes too. Now, this is the role that many stands across Twitter and social media were aching for. They want to see her succeed, and you got it. She is a star. She is a very talented actress who has gotten this lead role that will probably define her career more so. Basically, like Anora, she got a chance at stardom. She got well. Anora doesn't want stardom, but Mickey Madison got a chance to stardom for a prosperous life at the same way Anora with this marriage, with this potential marriage, will get. And it's really, really, really entertaining, and it's really fun. And I think if one of the films, if one film will basically be like a good player in terms of audiences, this might be the one. This might be the most approachable and entertaining one for modern audiences and like non-cinephile audiences too.
So why isn't it higher on your list?
Because I like the other ones better. No. I found the other ones far more intriguing, and there's one I am a bit biased on because he's my favorite filmmaker of all time. But there are other ones I found more fascinating and more interesting thematically, and one of them had me thinking. After I watched it, it had me thinking more about it than Anora did. But Anora is still a very solid movie. It's really entertaining. I really have fun with it, and I can't wait to watch it again. But of course, there are other films I like. I prefer a film that I can like with more psychological and thematic layerings than one that's more so entertaining per se. But Anora has its many ideas, and Sean Baker explores them, very well. But there are other films that I thought that were more fascinating in terms of a psychological context.
Were you surprised that it won the Palm?
No, because throughout the festival, there were a couple films that there were many chatterings about films that might win it. People were talking about Bird when it premiered. Oh, this might win the Palm, because at that point there were many like Rocky movies, and then there was Emilia Perez, but that one was very divisive. Like when I say like people hate it and people love it, that was the strand. Or people loved it or people loathed it. I was on the latter side, of course, but it ended up winning 2 awards. So in that case, it may work for many, like for much more people than we thought of. It worked for the jury, so it might work for many other people. But the one film that remained steady in terms of critics, in terms of people, in terms of chatter and rumors about the jury, it was Anora. Anora was the one that remained central. Many people were talking about, oh, they maybe give the film to the Seed of the Sacred Fig for its important messaging, or All We Imagine As Life for that same reason. And they thought they were going to give like something like Best Director or Best Actress for the prize for Anora. But as the festival went on, the film that everyone was talking about was Anora. So in that case, like everybody was like, okay, yeah, this is winning. But still, it was shocking to see like Sean Baker winning like the Palme d'Or such early in his career. It's applause to him, because he's becoming a better filmmaker with each film. So he rightfully deserves it. It wouldn't be my personal pick, but I'm not mad at it.
So here's the question, because the only nomination that a Sean Baker film has gotten at the Oscars is for Willem Dafoe, which you could argue is more because of Willem and his sort of beloved status within the industry. Do you think that this could be the movie that is a breakthrough for Sean Baker himself?
I think this is, yeah, I think so. I think this, if we're talking about Oscars, this is the one of the few films from Cannes that might actually get like assured nominations. Like at this point in time, of course we got other festivals. We got Locarno, we got TIFF, we got New York, and we got Venice. That many films are premiering on that point. It's still very early on, but in terms of the critics, in terms of the buzz it has, and the acclaim, the overall acclaim, and the Palme d'Or win, it is. You can see how the film can get a couple nominations. It may have a good package. It may have let's see, best picture, actors, and screenplay, and maybe add director on it if they're willing to embrace the chaos, well, grounded chaos in some form of Anora, but they will find it entertaining. I believe so. So you may see the Anora like win plenty of critics awards, and that may lead to other people like having an eye on it, and it may earn some Oscar nominations in April next year.
You mentioned Mickey's performance. So I think the performance that I've seen the most buzz about from Cannes is the actress from Amelia Perez. I've seen her in multiple predictions. Do you think that Mickey has what it takes to sustain buzz all season, or do you think it may just be a Sean Baker sort of come to Jesus moment for him in terms of the Oscars? I don't know how else to.
I think if they really, really, really like the movie, she might get a spot. But no, it's a bit hard since she's like no, she has worked before with other filmmakers. She was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and in Scream, so some people know her, but this is like her defined role. This is the role that she she has that it's basically a lead role, a big one, and she's really good at it. So it really depends in how how what the lineup looks like, after Venice, or more so like in November or December, when we get a little bit a bigger taste of who's over there, like which film is rising, which film is losing buzz of sorts. But I believe she can maintain buzz, but I don't think it is assured that the Oscars will go for it.
All right, so we have 6 films that have outranked our Palme d'Or winner. Let's see what these titles. And I'd love for you, as you tell me about them, tell me sort of why I guess they ranked as high as they did. So let's start with number 6.
Number 6 is Misericordia, or Misericord, in by Alan. I don't know how to say his name. Alain Juraudi. I botched that name very hard. I botched that name very hard. But he is a provocateur. I think I can leave it at that. He's a very, very interesting filmmaker, but one that has provoked and more so shocked audiences before with his films. Not to the point of let's say a Gaspar Noé, who he's willingly, provoking. This filmmaker doesn't want to his main focus isn't to provoke, unlike Gaspar. Even though I really like Gaspar Noé as a filmmaker, but Misericordia is his latest work, and it's a film that I didn't see many people talking about it, or many people even seeing it. So I was really interested to watch it because I saw some of the images and they look really striking. So I started seeing a little bit about his work, and started seeing some of his films, and they are indeed provoking, but they are really, really interesting and thematically layered films. It's I don't know how to explain this one, but it's basically a man who commits a very, very demanding act, and then he is basically put in a society where he's intertwined in a web of carnal desires. And it is a very atmospheric film with astonishing cinematography and very strange dialogue. And it's like, how do I say it? I know the word in Spanish, but it's very like dicted. It's very like the actors say their lines in such a manner that it feels so odd. It reminded me a bit of how Albert Serra write his scripts. He's the director of Pacifiction and Liberté. It's like it feels what they're saying doesn't feel grounded at all, but the themes and how it develops feel as such. It's very stilted, it's very strange, but it has such a control. Like the director has such a control over his atmosphere and the tone that it really worked. And I'm a big fan of weird movies and surreal ones, so it captivated all the way through. And since it was a surprise, that I was going to like it this much, that's one of the reasons that I think I put it above Anora. But I need to watch both of them, again to see how I would place them. But in general, the thing is, I really don't like rankings at all. I hate rankings. I hate ranking things. I hate putting scores in my reviews or in Letterboxd. I put scores in Letterboxd only for films I review, and that's mostly for the reader, for the one who's coming across it. Because sometimes they don't read. They see a score and then they read. So I want people to read stuff. So I have to place the score. But I really don't like putting scores or ranking things because it all depends on how the conversation goes with the film. It's basically how your experience with it, and I think a ranking or a score diminishes somewhat that experience, that dialogue that you have with a picture, and I really don't like placing things in some order. I do it for festivals because it's much more easier for if I do how to say, if I do pieces about the best and worst of the festival, or if I do like podcasts, like this one, I put in ranking so it's easier for us to structure things and flow the conversation, going from worst to best and things. But I don't really have much of a reason for placing it above Anora, but it worked for me better than Anora, and it reached my taste, my cinematic taste more than Anora did. So, in this case, I will place it above Anora for that sole reason.
Well, I think it sounds like maybe this is probably one of the biggest surprises of the festival for you, and I think that alone is something that I would probably have a similar mindset of like, well, if something is unexpected, that sort of tends to push it above something that may be solid but may or may not be what you thought it was going to be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically it. Really, that's basically it. Why I put it so highly. And then I started like thinking about it afterwards, and then it made me like the film a bit more than before. So that's the reason why I placed it above Nora.
And that's something I would like to touch on too at the end. I'm always, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning too, like sometimes the more something sits with you, sometimes it's like a benefit because you think about it more and you like it more. And then other times I've watched movies in the past where I really liked, and then the more I think about it, I'm like, what exactly did I like about this movie? Sometimes the passage of time is more negative than positive.
Yeah, and for that same reason, I hate putting scores on my reviews, because a score diminishes that. And when you think back, when you think back about a film, like you recap your thoughts on it, and then putting a score like or a grade on it, it's like like a stamp of I don't know, like it's something like distasteful in some way. I don't like, it's fine, I guess, like if I have to do it, like I'm not bothered by it, but when I think about a film, I don't think about the score I gave it. I think about my thoughts on it. I think about what my experience was. And sometimes you think back a few months later, I'm like, oh, I like this a little bit less, a little bit more.
Mm.
But then you have the score placed, and you're like, oh, like what did I do? Like I can change anything now, and so that's why I prefer like the words stay there, and the people read my thoughts on that moment about the film, instead of like focusing on the score that's
Mm.
placed, that's labeled there, because that's not what it was about.
Well, I do appreciate you going through your ranking with me simply because it was an entertaining way to have this conversation. But I
Yeah,
completely
exactly.
understand where you're coming from. It is really hard. But we've come to the top 5, which is a very exciting place to be. So, what's number 5?
Number 5 is yet another very divisive film for for a film about for a film directed by Gia Zanke, who's really a acclaimed filmmaker. He's made film like Ashes Pure as White or The Touch of Sin or Still Life. He's very acclaimed. He's a very fascinating director. And this film is it's another one of the bunch. For some people, that is basically the negative side of it, which is basically one of the bunch, since his approach is similar to the ones that he for the films he made before. But in my case, I found it even more enriching for that same reason that we talked about a little bit earlier about filmmakers retreading the past and self-reflecting on what they have made before and placing it on today's time. In this case, Giazanke basically explores it's mostly like a travelogue of some sort. Almost, again, I've used the word plenty of times now in this episode in the past. It's almost documentary-esque. It is like non-narrative in some way or form, mostly atmospheric and layered, like an essay, like a basically a travelogue that covers time and present, almost like reality and fiction in some way, across time and location. It's basically a journey about a woman basically finding her lover through the different years from the 2000s to the 2020s. We explore these 2 decades in their lives as they explore their passionate love, but it's slowly like disappearing across separation because one of the partners moves to a different location, and then we see how he moves, but then the other one slowly follows, and there's a thread between how each pair moves that it makes the film so rich and so touching, and the performances elevate that feeling. And I think that structure also made people dismiss it a bit, because making a film that feels like it doesn't have a precise narrative, because
Mm.
it's basically a person going somewhere and the other one like trying to find them, like it is their passage of trying to find the person through different, in quotes, clues, or the basically their passion, or the passion they once had or they had still, guiding them through to for the next stage of their life and for the next stage of of that time. And I don't know, I really found it really fascinating. And yeah, that's basically it. Why I really loved it a lot. And I didn't write about it for the same reason that I didn't write about Bluestone Palace, because I had many thoughts on it, and as I kept thinking about it, I liked it a little bit more and more. And Gia Zanke's films are often, for me, in my case, I watched them once and then I need to watch them again,
Mm.
because in the first instance I feel a little bit cold, and then as I keep thinking about it, it warms me a bit more. And that instance about trying to going back on a film that didn't work for you that much and then rethreading through it slowly and having like a one-sided conversation because you are not seeing the film per se, you know, and you reflecting slowly about the themes and thinking about it and then writing something down. No, it helps. And in this case, I didn't write about it, but I wrote a little bit pieces here and there. I was going to write a review, but I decided to back out because I had to define my thoughts on it more. But I really want to write about it later on, but I really love this film.
Were you not talking about The Beast last week?
Yeah.
So would you say that this movie is similar? Because it sounds like
No.
Oh, okay.
This was more grounded. The Beast
Gotcha.
is so surrealistic and almost Lynchian. That's something absurd that I don't know how it works, but it ends up working magnificently. This one's more grounded. The case with Giasanke is really humanistic. He's really naturalistic in some cases. He really focuses more on the human nature, and whereas Bonello in The Beast wants to focus on how humanity intertwines with artificial intelligence and how that mixes with our emotions and how we explore life without love, since emotions are being erased for you to be a proper human being at that point in time. It's both of the films are really interesting and fascinating how they explore love.
Well, I'm super intrigued by this. I don't think I'd heard about it before you brought it up just now. So, and if you see me, I'm taking notes this whole time that you've been talking of like all the movies that I want to watch. So, wow. Okay, number 4.
Ooh, number 4. Okay, number 4. I'm really
It's always good when you have to like laugh or smile before that. That lets me know that I'm in for something good. So,
okay, number 4. It's The Shrouds by David Cronenberg, but don't think of it as number 4. Think about it as a film I really loved that many people hated. I don't know why, but well, I understand in some cases why, but I'm quite biased with David Cronenberg because David Cronenberg is my favorite filmmaker. Crash and Videodrome are some of my favorite films of all time. I love most of his work. He's a really fascinating filmmaker that has explored the tenures of the body, both in modifications and in exploration itself, in very fascinating ways that have influenced many directors. And I find him very fascinating in how he started working and exploring the body in the first half of his career, and then in the second half he started working on the mind. He started functioning, like working more psychologically in terms of how the brain works and stuff. And in his latest work, he does so. And although the premise, which is about a guy who is mourning the death of his wife, and he sees his wife through a concoction he has made, which basically you can see how her body at the moment she is buried decomposes in real time. And although that premise might sound like very gory and very like back to his roots, it isn't as such. It's like Crimes of the Future when you think about it. It has some grotesque and slight gore, but it's not the main focus. It's not the main attraction. It's less provocative than his previous work. And the reason why it's not as provocative as his previous work is because he, again, ties from his real life and explore and self-relates with the character he has written to his own life, because the character that Vincent Cassel plays is basically David Cronenberg. David Cronenberg also still mourning the death of his wife many years later, and the same thing that Vincent Cassel's character is mourning the death of his wife and still is obsessed with her death. He's still questioning and coming to his, he's basically going through a web of different outcomes and different conclusions, which many people disconnected with it and thought that how do you say it? There's a word. There's a word that I want that it basically describes that, but I don't remember. Conspiracy theories. He's making his own conspiracy theories about his wife's death. And David Cronenberg, through that conspiracy theory, explores how we start to doubt, start to question things about the person that we love that is now gone. We start to think of how this could have been stopped, or I wish I had more time, or how did this happen? And you think and the mind starts to blur a bit with these random conspiracy theories, instead of like focusing on the the harsh reality of life, which is like this ending that everybody must go through, but it's truly difficult to to perceive. So in that case, we come with these random conspiracy theories to try and make sense of it all, but in some sense it distances ourselves from truly like laying down our emotions. And Cronenberg, in an interview before the film premiered, he said that he watched films to see the people that is now no longer with him. And he said he viewed cinema as a cemetery. And in some sense, it may sound very dark and very tragic and like very brooding in some sense, but it is true. I don't know if I had this feeling, but if you see a film from the 1920s or 1930s, let's say silent cinema or the screwball era of 30s and 40s, when you see one of those black and white films, there's always this question about what happened to them, and you start searching. They're like, oh, he's passed away, or he passed away, and then you start to think, oh, how did this person pass away, or how does this, and then you like it comes with another layer. Your viewing experiences with older films, like I'm talking way older films, not 80s or 70s, but like 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s. You start to think back on this haunting feeling that basically you are watching Ghost at this time. And I hate Babylon, but one of the brilliant things that Babylon did is a conversation that Jean Smart's character had with Brad Pitt's. And he said something about dancing with angels and ghosts. Basically, once a person plays a film through the sprocket, or in this case, or this day and age, you have streaming, and you can see on your computer, on the cinema or whatever, wherever you see it, whenever that film plays, you're basically seeing angels and ghosts, going on different ventures, going on different adventures, going through different things. But they're basically people who have now long gone, who are basically coming alive at the moment you press play on a film. And it's so fascinating how Cronenberg managed to use his own grief and using this technology that he wrote, this fictional technology that he wrote for the film, as a exploration on that thing that he said, on watching cinema as a cemetery and cinema as a placeholder for ghosts, basically, people coming alive that have now been long gone for many decades, but still that feeling that you get to slowly know them through this fictional portrait that the director did back then, and that's why I really, really like David Cronenberg, because he explores he makes sure that his narratives feel odd in terms of tension, tone, and ambiguity. But when you look at it at a closer glance, it comes as a rather really multi-layer and fascinating dissection on the topic he's covering. And in this case, it is grief, the pet topic. But as I mentioned before, it is how you use that topic. It is how you explore it. And in this case, it is utmost original, and creative. It is distinctive in its own nature. It is a film. It is a David Cronenberg film, but it feels like its own. It feels so separate from what he has done before, and it's very personal and emotional.
Have you ever thought about being a salesman? Because you have completely sold me on like all of these movies that I probably would not have watched otherwise. So
No, I hate talking.
if you want to sell cars or something, you should think about it as a way to earn extra money. Because wow,
no, I hate talking to people.
Well, thanks for talking to me.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, so I just have one question because I am unfortunately not very familiar with Cronenberg. I just haven't gotten around to it. It's not even like a dislike or anything. Where would I start? What is like your favorite or the one that you would recommend to people who may not be as familiar, given that he's like your go-to ride or die?
I mean, it depends on which era we are covering, because as I mentioned, one half of his career is basically him exploring the mind, and the other is him exploring the body. In that case, all of his films are weird, to some degree. They're very strange films, so it's really, if you don't know what you're expecting, it's really hard to get into it like from the get-go. But if we're talking about the body, the first films that come to mind are The Fly and Videodrome. If you're talking about the mind, there's Crash, and there's Maps with the Stars, or films like that. A History of Violence. Those are the films that they're quite the central figure of what he's trying to do in each era of his career, in each stage of his career. So I may say, The Fly and Videodrome for the body, and Crash and A History of Violence for the mind.
All right. Okay. I'm blown away. So what's in your third bronze on the podium for your bronze medal of Cannes?
Well, okay. In some ways, okay. Now speaking about, this may be the fourth, because Cronenberg's may be the third, but I don't know. But the next one, the next one we're talking about, it's the strangest one by a mile wide. It is very surreal. It's called The Hyperboreans by Joaquin Cosina and Cristobal Leon, which they made The Wolf House a couple of years ago, which many people liked and loved. And it's a very fascinating stop motion film, unlike anything you might have seen before. And in some case, this is like anything you have seen before, because fiction and reality blend, and narrative and documentary filmmaking blend, and it's experimental, and it's bold, and it's weird, and it's provocative, and surreal. And at one point in the film, there's a woman who introduces herself as, her name is Antonia Gisen. The actress is played by Antonia Gisen, and she introduces herself as Antonia Gisen. So in that immediate segment, you see the self-referential web that is going to be plotted. And then she talks about a fictional story that she was going to be part of a film that didn't get to be made because the film was stolen. And as she keeps talking about it, the set behind her begins to change and tries to mold what the story she's telling. And at one point she said, like, but I was a psychologist in Germany. I was treating this patient, and the background, the set begins to turn into a psychologist office, the room in which they meet with the patient. And then she stops talking for a while. She stops telling the story and begins the conversation with a patient, which at first is human, but then his face, he's like wearing a mask, but it's like a stop motion mask, and then he's like a puppet, and it's really hard to talk about this film because of all the narrative elements and like genre that these directors, which I think may be some of the most innovative and creative and mad directors I have seen in a long while, because of how absurd and creative each moment in the film is, and how in control they are in their craft, that it all works out amazingly. You know, the directors are also in the film, but their voices are, and they are basically played by like a, how do I explain this? They're like wood, but their face are like stop mode. They're like fake, like fake mask, fake masks of them, and they're beheaded, and the like the rest of their body is like pieces of wood and stuff. I don't know how to explain this film. I had talked to plenty of people about my experience at Cannes, and they asked me what my favorite films are, and I speak a little bit here and there, but then I get to this film and I don't know how to sell it to them. I don't know how to explain it to them because everything is so weird, and everything like turns into stop motion, then puppetry, then live action, then documentary, then narrative, and it all blends into a nightmarish concoction that feels almost like if it feels a bit like the online series that David Lynch that David Lynch did back in 2005, 2004, which is called Rabbits, which also had like a bit of a part in Inland Empire. I don't know if you have seen it, but that's a really magnificent film. And it also combines a bit of that element of play and stop motion and innovativeness that occurred in the play scene in Beau is Afraid, where Joaquin Phoenix is an audience member, and then he is in the play, and then he is the character, the main protagonist, and then he ventures his life, and he grows from young to old, and it is like that, but in their own mad way of exploring the story of a lost film about a Chilean um, Nazi uh, Nazi approvalist person. It's so weird. Like it's really weird, but it's so fascinating. It's so good, and I may not sell it to you properly with what I'm saying, but it's when I'm truly, it is one of the most distinctive films you will see in a very, very long while. And I hope if you get something out of the babble that I have said for these past 5 minutes or so, it is that this is one of the most distinctive film in a very, very long while.
All right. I think that is an excellent selling point. What is in your silver position? Give us number 2, please.
Okay, this is yet another mixed review film from the In Competition slate. The Substance by Coralie Farget, which is a very, very nasty, on the nose satire about women and how they're valued in Hollywood. And when I say this film is bloody, it is very, very bloody, especially in the last couple of 30 minutes. It is like, I think the Lumiere, where the film premiered, is still stained in blood by that ending. It needs to be. It needs to be because it's so bloody, man. But okay, there are some complaints with the film, with satire being too scaly and too on the nose, and then coincidentally being like how do I say this, very, what's the word, very straightforward, very straightforward, like very on your face, like it doesn't hide that it's a satire, and the lines are very campy on occasions. The main character is called Elizabeth Sparkle, and the film begins by the placing of her Hollywood star, and then slowly, being trampled upon, and everyone passing through it, and nobody cares that it's just another star in the walkway. It doesn't have no importance at all. So just by that scene alone, you already know, like, oh yeah, we know what you're going through, Coralie. It's obvious. But she doesn't care that it's obvious. She wants to prove the point that it is obvious. So when she comes up with these body horror manifestations that are really impressive, when I say it's really impressive, it's really, really great body horror, what we're dealing with here. And cinematically, it's really, really thrilling and magnetic and really entertaining. When she gets to construct those moments, it proves her point that it has to be straightforward in order to be more shocking and more fierce, more potent in a way, in a cinematic way. And I'm a big fan of body horror, of course. As I mentioned, my favorite filmmaker is David Cronenberg. So in some cases, I might be a bit too nice with the film because, of course, I love body horror. So if you have people, well, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it because it will be a fault on my part if I begin to spoil how body horror is implemented in this film. But think of it as a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde meets the Picture of Dorian Gray type story, which is basically a person wants to live a life that they cannot have right now, so they create a persona that can do it for them. And then the complications arise between the person, the new body, and the creator, succubus, and the one being basically delved into nothingness by this new creature that is sucking the life out of the originator, in some case. And it's really, really fascinating because Coralie, basically in her debut film Revenge, she used the exploitation film subgenre of rape revenge thriller and made it her own with her distinct style and flash. And in this case, with body horror, she does the same thing. She is influenced by many cinema legends, such as the aforementioned David Cronenberg and Stanley Kubrick and Lucio Fulci. But at the same time, she uses some of the cult classics like The Stuff and Society as inspirations for her mad creations and her bloody delights, as one might call it. And it's really, really good. It reminded me a bit of how Julia Ducournau is so cinematically adept, and like, she knows a lot about horror cinema. Like, her knowledge of the genre just is shown throughout the film, not only in its references, but in how she creates her own story within the blood and guts and everything that's pouring in the film. And it's one of my favorite films at the festival, and everybody knew when I told them I was watching this film that they said, "Oh, it's going to be one of your favorites," and it did disappoint.
All right, so insert all the drum rolls in the world. Being that this is chasing the gold standard of Hector's con experience is.
The thing is, it's not even. It's a short film. It's a short film. but it is as cinematic as all the films that played in the in competition films. And it's not me by Leos Carax. It's a 40-minute self meditative, self-reflective film about Leos Carax, who revisits his films and his own life through a short canvas, but contains many cinematic inspirations where he talks about basically everything that has popped in his mind in the last couple of years and everything he has reflected upon, since since a long while, since he started his career as a young French revolutionary filmmaker that hasn't been getting, the flowers he deserves, at least by American audiences, because France loves him, but I don't think the Americans have, properly given him the applause, the rounds of applause he deserves for being such an innovative and inspirational filmmaker. So in this short film, he basically talks about his own filmography, but at the same time, the artistic surrounding of the modern era. He's basically dissecting what he knew once is not what he knows now. Like the cinema he made before can't be replicated or can't be made today. There's always this difference between the eras, in terms of filmmaking, in terms of production. It's not what he once knew, but at the same time, he talks about history. He talks about poetry. He's very visual in terms of how he explores this, because he reenacts some films of his career. We'd see Monsieur Merlet, which is played by Denis Lavant. If you have seen Holy Motors, he's the big-nosed, mustachioed, barefoot, green suit wearing troll in some cases that ventures around the streets of Paris, with the Godzilla soundtrack coincidentally following him around. It's so weird, but I don't know how he came up with that, but it's truly fascinating that he did, because that's one of the most underrated cinematic characters of all time. But in terms of It's Not Me, it's basically a self-reflection of his career, the surroundings in the artistic surroundings that he has come across with, and he's slowly like delving into, and his own thoughts and feelings about the world itself. And I don't know, it's I don't know why it's my favorite one, but the effect it had on me, being a big fan of his work and seeing him how he used his previous work as a guideline for this new modern project that at the same time like goes back to the past and ventures to the present of his career, now decades into his filmography, even though he hasn't had like that many films in the past couple of years, the last one being Annette, and previous to that, Holy Motors. But it's still like a very long time between films that it has gone through. But it's very potent, and I think it has to do with how big of a fan you are of Leos Carax. If you are, then you will definitely be in love with what he has to offer. If you're not, it may be a little bit harder, but sorry, but it's such a marvelous project and in such a short package, but it's still, as I mentioned before, very cinematic in its own right, and more so cinematic than that some of the films I saw at Cannes, even in just 40 minutes.
I think what has been the most fascinating aspect of this conversation is not necessarily the films, but just getting to learn about you as a film lover. And I'm serious, like the kinds of things that appeal to you. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like I have a weird picture into your brain just based on where you ranked these movies. And I'm just completely fascinated by it. And I want to see every single one of these movies. Okay. as we close out, I have some rapid fire questions for you. I want you to just tell me the first thing that pops into your head, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Film you missed that you most would like to see.
Oh, there are plenty. Grand Tour by Miguel Gomez. People have been telling me that that film is awesome, but that film played when I left, and I felt so cheated. I felt very cheated. I felt very cheated, and I'm really pissed I didn't get to see it. But I hope that in other festivals coming near, I get a chance to see it.
Okay. Film you'd be most likely to recommend of the ones on your list, I guess. All 28.
I think Anora is like the most audience friendly, but to my friends, to my close friends, I will say The Substance and Anora as well. You know, Anora. I think Anora and The Substance.
Film you can't stop thinking about.
It's Not Me, The Substance, The Hyperboreans, The Shrouds. Those four.
What is the movie that you almost forgot you even saw?
Oof, that's a lot of them. Holy cow. I think Holy Cow, because that was the most straightforward and vanilla flavored film I saw at the festival. It's truly baffling that it had a spot at the festival, but hey, people connected with it in some way or another. People were telling me it was good, and I'm like, oh, okay, good for you.
Most likely to watch again.
The Substance, The Shrouds. It's not basically my top four, but
Okay.
in reality, I will watch again most of the films that I really enjoyed. Like basically my top 10, or I will really want to dive into them again to see what else I can get from them.
What movie on your list are you most wanting people to give a shot to?
The Shrouds, because I think that was the one that people were most disappointed with, knowing that David Cronenberg is a real like influential filmmaker. You know, he's a legend basically. He's the king of body horror, and people were very disappointed by that one. But in another way, I would want people to give a shot to Misericordia and Caught by the Tides by Yasin K, because those were the two that people knew. Well, Misericordia was being watched by many people, but Caught by the Tides was in competition, and still many people like missed it. So I wish that another festival that plays, people get a chance to see it and give it more attention that it deserves.
A film that surprised you the most?
I think Misericordia, because I didn't expect nothing from that. I was only like just watching a couple of images from it, and they were really good looking, and they looked like what I like about cinema. You know, it really looked really intriguing, and when doing research about the filmmaker, I was really interested in what he had to say. So I think Misericordia is the one, but in other instance, in a cinematic way, the Hyperboreans, because that was just cinematically so audacious and impressive.
What actor or actress was your biggest discovery in terms of performance?
I don't know. I haven't thought about that one. I think that the two leads from Blue Sun Palace were quite striking. I think the actors in All We Imagine Us Live were really good as well. So those two leading duos.
What maybe behind the scenes, that if it's like cinematography, score, what movie had some sort of element that really blew you away or surprised you?
The atmosphere in Misericordia. I think it's such a strange tone and surrealistic tone that feels very, very like far off this world. It feels like they're having conversations from another planet, but the way the director handles the film, it's in total control. It never feels like odd. You just embrace it. So I think that the tone and atmosphere of Misericordia.
Which one of these movies do you think is most likely to have any sort of lasting impact 10 years from now?
Oh, wow. I I don't know. That's a really hard question. That's a really hard question because I don't. I think if Anora already has the Palme d'Or win on its back, so in theory, and no, and possibly, and with the potential of having some Oscar nominations later in the year, that people may say that one, but I think It's Not Me by Leos Carax. I think people will look onto his repertoire and then venture upon this short film that he made about his life and his work and how he views art and history and things, and will be very, very impressed by what he has done throughout each decade of his career. So maybe It's Not Me, but I'm truly not sure. It's a really tough question.
Which movie do you think is most likely to win awards?
Anora and All We Imagine as Light. I think those two films are the most likely to nab an Oscar nomination or so. And even Emilia Perez, even though I really dislike that one, I think that one might win some awards if they do the proper campaign. But I think those three are the most likely.
All right. Lastly, if you were the Cannes jury, what film would you give the palm, actor, actress, etc.? Give me your personal award wins of the festival.
You know what? I saw that tweet a couple while ago, like a few days after a festival, and I was trying to do that, but it took me a lot of time because there were plenty films missing, and I saw a lot of films from the Directors Fortnight and Critics Week, that I didn't focus myself, in the in competition films, even though I saw more than 10 of them. So if I can do that lineup with whatever film from whatever section, I can do it easily. But in terms of in competition films, it is really hard. So
Well, what about
if you permit me to use films from different sections instead of in competition films only, I can easily answer
I
the
was
question.
thinking of the movies that you saw, but I guess you could do whatever lineup you want. I mean, it's
Well,
your
perfectly,
episode.
perfect. Okay, so
Okay.
I will give the Palme d'Or to It's Not Me, the short film by Leos Carax. I will give Best Director to. Damn. Okay, there are plenty of hard choices. I think I will give Best Director to the Hyperboreans, for the incredible craft they have done. I will give. What do I have? Screen. Oh wait. Grand Jury Prize. I will give the palm to It's Not Me. Grand Prix to The Substance. Special jury prize to Misericordia. Best director to the Hyperboreans. Best. What do I have left? Screenplay, actor, actors, right? I will give actress to Zhao Tao from Caught by the Tides.
Wow. Okay.
I would give best screenplay to. I think I would give best screenplay to either The Shrouds or Blue Sun Palace. And what do I have left? Actor. Screw it. Let's give actor to Richard Gere. He deserves it. He deserves it.
Wow. Screw it. Let's give best actor to Richard Gere is as good of a line as I've gotten from you in 2 episodes of this podcast. Do you have any closing thoughts on Cannes Film Festival 2024, Hector, as we exit this conversation and as you put these films behind you and look forward? Anything that you would like to put into the time capsule that is this Chasing the Gold episode?
It was a very interesting festival, a very mixed one, but in some ways that made it more interesting because not everybody's going to have the same lineup of films that they liked. It's everybody that I talked to had very different favorite films. Most of them had Anora, but the rest of their, let's say, top five were plenty different. People had Bird, people had The Substance, people had Oh Canada, people had All We Imagine as Light, and there was also Grand Tour, which premiered later on the festival. And there was also the Seed of the Sacred Fig, that I didn't get a chance to see, but people have been saying that that's really like a magnetic and magnificent picture. So it was a really interesting festival. So I'll just leave it as that. It was interesting, mixed, and although not up to par with the previous lineups, it was unique in its own right.
Wow. Okay, Hector. Where can people find you on the internet to plug your incredible work?
You can find me in Incessant Films, Loud and Clear Reviews, and The Movie Buff. You can follow me on Twitter at Héctor Ha, and Instagram on Héctor Ha Reviews, and Letterboxd as Héctor Ha as well. And yeah, that's it. I don't have any more socials because those are just too much already.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone to follow Hector on Letterboxd and then pressure him about his ratings and torture him into continuing to rate movies forever and ever and ever, even though he hates it. I'm Shadan Larkey, at Shadan Larkey everywhere. Rate and review Chasing the Gold. Please tell your friends, give us feedback, spread the word. This was so fun, Hector. Thank you. Sincerely, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to Cannes 2025. Hopefully, I'll have you back before then. But if not, I will see you next year where we can do this again.
Of course.
And that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching.